everyone. You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Thomas I. Likeness, broadcasting from our studio in Edmonton, Canada. And in the news tonight, we have several updates from several of our correspondents from across North America. I'm Ellen Ramos in Washington, D.C.
The Electoral College explained.
Jane Kathleen Gregorio joins us from Corpus Christi, Texas.
Texas ranked best state for business for 8th consecutive time, and Governor Abbott appoints Rebecca Huddle to the Texas Supreme Court.
Catherine Fiesta of our bureau in Delano, California.
Burbank enforces facial coverings in public places.
Anna Cui in Las Vegas, Nevada.
More financial assistance for small businesses and nonprofit organizations impacted by COVID-19.
Bobby Soriano in New York will bring us several stories from the business desk and the Eagle News Roundtable. Well, what are we going to be talking about tonight? We'll be discussing what other languages we wish we could speak and why. But first, an overview of how COVID-19 looks. According to the Coronavirus Resource Center of the Johns Hopkins University in Medicine, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Time today, the number of COVID-19 cases reported worldwide stands at now more than 40,200,000. These are the top three countries with reported positive cases. The United States, more than 8.2 million. India, more than 7.5 million. Brazil reports more than 5.2 million. And sadly, more than 1,100,000 people worldwide have succumbed to this virus. The top three countries with reported COVID-19 related deaths: in the United States, the infection has claimed the lives of just over 220,000 Americans. Brazil, nearly 154,000 COVID-19 deaths. And in India, more than 114,000 people have died from the virus. Our coverage begins now. America's top government scientist found himself the recipient of President Donald Trump's wrath today as Trump referred to Dr. Anthony Fauci and other health experts as idiots. In a call with campaign staffers on which several reporters were present, Trump told them that people are tired of COVID. He says people want to be left alone, adding, and these are Trump's words, they are tired of hearing Fauci and all those idiots. Now, Fauci is a key member of the White House Corona Task Force. The pandemic has killed almost 250,000 people in the United States. Trump went on to complain, and again, his words, he's referring to Fauci here. He's been here for 500 years. The 79-year-old Fauci is recognized worldwide for his work in infectious diseases. Trump claims if the government had listened to Fauci, there would have been 700,000 or 800,000 more deaths. Later in the day, though, the president landed in Arizona for a rally, and he toned down his remarks somewhat when he spoke to reporters.
Really, Dr. Fauci's a very nice man, but we let him do what he wants to do. He gets a lot of television. He loves being on television, and we let him do it. Sometimes he says things that are a little bit off, and they get built up, unfortunately, but he's a nice guy. I like him, but he's called a lot of bad calls. He said, don't wear a mask, and he said, don't ban China. There were bad calls. He admits that. And I don't hold that against him. If I did, I wouldn't have him. No, I think he's a nice guy.
So Trump was asked by reporters, why don't you just fire Fauci?
I don't want to. I don't want to hurt him. He's been there for about 350 years. I don't want to hurt him.
Trump is holding two rallies today in Arizona, one in Prescott, the other in Tucson. Meantime, former Vice President Joe Biden had no public appearances planned for the day. He was apparently recording a television interview, but his running mate, Kamala Harris, is campaigning in Florida. She held a drive-in rally, and Harris took aim at Trump for his handling of the pandemic.
These days lost because of this virus that this man had an opportunity to deal with, but denied fact, denied science, and lied to the American people. So we know we need a change, and a change is coming.
Americans go to the polls in 15 days. The closure of the Canada-U.S. border to non-essential travel extended another month. Canadian Public Safety Minister Bill Blair says the restriction will remain in place until at least November 21st, was set to expire on Wednesday. In a radio interview, Prime Minister Trudeau said today he would love to see the border reopen, but he says the current state of the pandemic in the U.S. continues to be of concern. You know, normally there are 400,000 border crossings per day between the two countries. Well, what's on the minds of people when it comes to COVID-19 vaccines? That was the question the polling company Leger Opinion asked in a survey done a week ago. The company asked people whether they intended to get immunized when a vaccine is available. 63% of Canadians, 47% of Americans said, sure, I'll take the needle. About the same percentages thought certain groups should be given priority, and these would be groups like healthcare workers and those over the age of 65. But the idea of compulsory vaccination just isn't as popular as it was in the spring. Only 39% thought the vaccine should be mandatory. That's a 20% drop from last May. And while we wait for the vaccine, the government is pushing people to get a flu shot so we don't end up with a twin-demic. That's COVID and the flu. So get your flu shot. And what about the pandemic and the economy? Politicians, are you listening? 72% of Canadians, 63% of Americans felt that preventing the spread of COVID-19 is more important than preventing economic fallout and job losses. Up next, reports from the Washington, D.C. Bureau and Las Vegas, Nevada. Eagle News America continues.
Hello there. Imagine Demi got the virus and she infected 2 more. And those 2 infected a lot more of people. And it goes on and on until it became an epidemic. But what if Demi stayed at home? Then those 2 wouldn't have contracted the virus. Then those people would have not been infected. This is not just your battle, it's everyone's, and you can be a huge help. Follow social distancing, or better yet, stay at home.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Thomas I. Likeness. We go to the nation's capital now, where Eagle News Washington correspondent Imelin Ramos is standing by. Imelin, the American election process is just a little more involved than simply counting the ballots nationwide. You know, in fact, the president is not directly elected by the people. That task is done by what's known as the Electoral College. Imelin, take us back to school for a moment and explain the process.
Hi, Tom. I will try. As we reach the final stretch before the elections, many are wondering what the Electoral College is all about. Many have the belief that it's winner take all, that it's popular vote who wins the election. In certain elections, that is certainly the case. But in the presidential election, the winner is chosen by the Electoral College. Why is this important to understand? If we remember the 2016 election, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. She actually had more than 3 million total votes over then candidate Donald J. Trump. Why then did Donald J. Trump become our next president? The short answer is that he passed the 270 Electoral College votes necessary to win the White House. With just 5 weeks until the 2020 election featuring Trump and Biden, the Electoral College is once again coming into focus. Why do we even have an Electoral College? To understand what this is, we have to know that there are 538 members that comprise the Electoral College. They gather in their states' respective capitals every 4 years after the presidential election to designate the winner. In order to win, a presidential candidate must obtain an absolute majority of the college vote, or 270 of the 538 votes to win. The system originated with the U.S. Constitution in 1787, establishing the rules for indirect single-round presidential elections. The country's founding fathers saw the system as a compromise between direct presidential elections with universal suffrage and an election by members of Congress, an approach that many believe to be insufficiently democratic. So, who comprise the 538? Most are local elected officials or party leaders, but their names do not appear on ballots, and their identities are mostly unknown to voters. Each state has as many electors as it has members in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. The Constitution leaves it to states to decide how their electors' votes should be cast. In every state but two, Nebraska and Maine, the candidate winning the majority of popular votes theoretically wins all that state's electors. Nothing in the Constitution obliges electors to vote in one way or another. This is where the term, quote, faithless electors comes from. However, in July 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that states could impose punishments on such disloyal voters by establishing laws mandating electors to cast their votes according to the popular vote in that state. Now, according to the latest Real Clear Politics Averages poll, Biden has a commanding lead of 51.3% to Trump's 42.4%. But as we learned, it's the Electoral College vote that matters the most. So at this point, anything can happen. In Washington, D.C., I'm Ellen Bondoc Ramos, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Tom.
Well, teacher Imelin, very good lesson on that, because a lot of people just don't understand, you know, the concept of the Electoral College, or the fact that the United States isn't really one country. It's a federation of 50 states. Now, we've heard a lot about this Electoral College, and I'm curious, when do they actually meet and cast their votes?
Yes, Tom, good question. Well, electors will gather in their states on December 14th and cast votes for president and vice president. Why this date? U.S. law states that, quote, meet and cast their vote on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. So on January 6, 2021, Congress will certify the winner, who will then get sworn in on January 20, 2020.
Okay. Also, just wondering, have there been other presidential elections where the winning candidate actually won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote?
Oh, yes. You know, there have been 5 presidents who came to office by winning the Electoral College but losing the popular vote. John Quincy Adams was the first in 1824 against Andrew Jackson. This also happened famously in 2000 with President George W. Bush and Al Gore. And of course, the 2016 elections are still fresh in everyone's minds. Trump versus Clinton. Tom.
I thank you for the education this evening, Imelin, and you take care and stay safe.
You're welcome, Tom. Thank you for having me.
The great state of Texas continues to hold the honor of being the best state for business, and there's a new face on the bench of the Texas Supreme Court. Jane Kathleen Gregorio is standing by in Corpus Christi to tell us all about that.
Thank you, Tom, and howdy from the Lone Star State. On Wednesday, howdy. I actually learned a lot from Imelin regarding the Electoral College, so thank you for that too. Meanwhile, here in Texas, on Wednesday, Governor Greg Abbott issued a statement after the results from a recent survey of U.S. corporate executives ranked Texas the #1 state to do business for the 8th time in a row since 1996. The survey results were revealed at the International Economic Development Council annual conference held this year virtually from Dallas. The governor gave credit to the talented workforce, welcoming business climate, and state-of-the-art infrastructure, stating, "I want to congratulate the Texas Economic Development Corporation on their well-earned recognition as one of the premier economic development marketing organizations in the nation. EXEDC, working together with my Economic Development and Tourism Office and other public and private sector partners throughout the state, play a pivotal role in bringing more investment and jobs to our state. As we safely and strategically mitigate the spread of COVID-19, Texas will continue to expand economic opportunity for all Texans and build a more prosperous future for the Lone Star State," Governor Abbott said. The winning strategies in economic development marketing survey conducted by Development Counselors International every 3 years has tracked trends in economic development since its inception in 1996 and is based on the aggregate responses of 316 corporate executives with site selection responsibilities. Texas also earned the #1 spot this year by a wide margin, with 48% of survey respondents preferring the state's business climate compared to second place Georgia's 25% favorability. Survey respondents considered Texas as a favorite among key factors, for example, as having one of the most favorable tax climates, an overall pro-business environment, and access to talent. Meanwhile, Governor Abbott announced on Thursday his appointment of Rebecca Huddle to the Texas Supreme Court, who will replace Justice Paul Green, who retired in August. The press conference was held at Stephen F. Austin High School, where Huddle attended school. Rebecca Huddle was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and received her undergraduate degree from Stanford University and her law degree from the University of Texas at Austin. Huddle previously served as a justice on the First Court of Appeals in Houston from 2011 to 2017, having won re-election in 2012 after her initial appointment. Governor Abbott stated, "I am proud to appoint Rebecca Huddle to the Texas Supreme Court, as she truly represents the American dream, being a first-generation American whose tireless work and dedication put her on a path to Stanford and the University of Texas School of Law." Meanwhile, Thomas, hope you're staying safe over there in Canada. In Corpus Christi, Texas, I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Thomas.
Before you go, Jane Kathleen, have you already experienced starting your own business in Texas?
Oh, that's a very good question, Thomas. Actually, my husband became interested in T-shirt printing, and so he tried starting a T-shirt business not too long ago with the materials and the supplies, and we were actually pretty successful. As a business, there are a lot of resources here in Texas that can help small business get their start, whether it's information on loans or how to navigate the getting of permits. We tried it more as a hobby and more of like a side, I guess, like a kind of like a side income. In terms of pursuing it further, I think it might stay just more of a hobby for us. But other than that, in the process of attempting to start a business, that's where we discovered that there are a lot of resources here for small business owners in Texas.
And that's good to hear because, in North America, both Canada and the United States, small business is actually the engine of the economy. The big corporations, yeah, they hire a lot of people, and it sounds impressive. But when you add up all the people that work for small businesses, whether it be a business with 50 employees or a mom and pop shop, that's where the majority of your jobs are. That's where the majority of the income is generated. And that's where the majority of people work. So it's really good to hear that your state is pitching in there to keep business afloat. Thanks for joining us tonight, Kathleen. And we'll We'll be back in a moment. Still to come, we've got correspondents bringing you stories from Delano, California, Las Vegas, Nevada, and we'll have business news with Bobby Soriano in New York City. This is Eagle News America.
Tissue boxes mo. Hindi mo ba alam, mauubos daw ang mga tissue products? Bakit naman? Ang raw materials daw ng mask at tissue products ay iisa lang. Saan naman galing ang balitang yan? Ay basta, narinig ko lang din. Maraming diling kayang nagpo-post sa Facebook at Twitter, kaya kung ako sa'yo, pumuha ka na din. Sige na't mauna na ako sa'yo
Huwag basta-basta magpaniwala
sa mga nakikita
o nababasa sa social media.
Magsaliksik at i-verify ang lahat ng impormasyon
nakukuha sa internet.
Tandaan,
maging responsable tayo
sa paggamit ng social media
nang hindi magdulot ng panic sa iba.
Kung paanong dapat labanan ng COVID-19
ay gayon din ang ating pagsugpo
sa black propaganda
at maling impormasyon.
Dennis Lu,
Lou Amelda,
Luigian Alpartosa,
Tyranel Pililu,
Hannibal Arevalo,
EBC,
Japan, Euro. We live in interesting times.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Thomas I. Likeness. Burbank, California. Authorities cracking down on people who don't wear face coverings in public places. And to tell us more about that, Eagle News correspondent Catherine Fiesta joins us from Delano, California. Good evening.
Good evening, Thomas, and thank you. So, just as you said, Burbank is enforcing facial coverings in public places, issuing citation fines up to $500 for those violating this new order. With increasing cases of COVID-19 surging in many states throughout the United States, many cities in California, including the city of Burbank, are being proactive with their mask and physical distancing requirements. According to the Burbank Police Department, Burbank has approved an order which now authorizes a mandated enforcement of facial coverings in certain public places within its city boundaries. This mandate was recently placed into effect just this past weekend in an effort to slow the spread of the COVID-19 virus, especially with the approaching flu season. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention has confirmed that, quote, cloth face coverings are a critical tool in the fight against COVID-19, and that face coverings could reduce the spread of the disease, particularly when used universally within communities. The face cloth covering enforcement focused primarily on areas where a majority of complaints have been received regarding the lack of face coverings, which are in downtown Burbank, the Magnolia Park Business District, City Parks, and the Chandler Bikeway. According to the Burbank Municipal Code Section 1-1-108.1, it gives authority for the issuance of administrative citations for persons in violation of city codes. The fine schedule is $100 for subsequent citations issued for violations of the same ordinance within a 12-month period. In Delano, California, Catherine Fiesta, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Thomas.
Catherine, does California currently have a statewide face cloth covering requirement outdoors or in public?
Yes, Thomas, we actually do. The state of California requires face mask coverings, both the nose and the mouth, when outside of the home in a public setting and when 6 feet physical distancing cannot be maintained. The difference here is that the city of Burbank is now issuing these various citation fines for not complying with this required face covering order. It might be helpful for residents to even leave a supply of extra masks, just like I do, in their cars, especially when someone is rushing. It's very easy to leave the house without a face cover. Thomas?
What's compliance like? Just your general observations. Are people buying into this, or are they following the example of other public officials that choose not to buy into it?
Well, in Kern County, that's where I reside. In Bakersfield, it's about half and half, actually. 50% people are wearing masks, and then you see some who aren't wearing masks. Bakersfield, California has also been issued under red, which now allows indoor dining. So you can definitely tell that there are some people who are not following this law.
How do you feel about things opening up a little bit? You said they're allowing indoor dining now. I know they've done that here, and I hate to say it, but in the past couple of months, cases are beginning to skyrocket. I think we're in our second wave now. But
yes.
what's it like there? How do you feel about the reopening?
Well, I'd like to say that I don't believe we should be opening indoor dining anytime soon, because in restaurants we don't have the specific ventilation system to allow the virus to be let out, such as some schools are doing. And to eat any food, you have to take off your face coverings. And indoor dining, I'm pretty sure not a lot of people are 6 feet apart from each other, as tables are pretty close to one another.
Yeah, and that's been a big problem here in Canada, in Toronto, another area where there's been a big outbreak again. These places are just becoming super spreaders because, again, and I think what happens is people have this pent-up demand to go out to restaurants, to entertainment spots, and they flock there and they crowd in, and the operators are saying, hey, I haven't had any money coming into the till for 5 months. I'm not going to turn away my customers. And let's face it, not everybody plays by the rules. I think that's a lot of what's happening. Do you feel that's happening there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I work at a physical therapy place, which requires face coverings, but I also work another job at a shoe store, which isn't so strict on face coverings. So I might even have customers come in without a mask, and according to the store owner, which is a local shop, they need all the revenue that they can get, since we did close the shop for about 2 months when COVID did start.
So yeah, you just bow to the pressure of the economics. Again, we go back to that survey I cited in a couple of segments ago. People are more concerned about preventing the spread than the economy, but there's still that element that keeps wanting to drive the economy. I thank you for joining us tonight, Catherine, and stay safe. Stay safe.
You as well, Thomas.
Thank you. Small businesses and nonprofit organizations in Nevada getting more government help. Standing by in Las Vegas to tell us about that is Eagle News correspondent Anna Cui. Anna, tell us about that.
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, so last week, Governor Sisolak announced the Pandemic Emergency Technical Support Grant Program, lots of big words there, which makes about $20 million in coronavirus relief funds available to small businesses, nonprofit organizations, including arts and culture organizations. Application process for this grant actually started today, October 19. It's going to go through November 2, 2020. In addition to this new grant, Clark County actually just closed applications for Small Business Protective Retrofit Grant and the Small Business Stabilization Grant. So lots of opportunity for people, small business owners to avail of these funds to help them. Who can qualify? Well, they have to have a physical location in the state, including home-based businesses, so that's good news. They have to have been in operation prior to March 1, 2020, and they have to have under 50 employees. And lastly, they have to have an annual gross revenue under $4 million. So eligible businesses can apply for up to $10,000 based on their actual expenses, and any funds received will not be required to be paid back. They can use it to pay for rent, inventory, payroll, utilities, and we've seen them all, right, Thomas? I mean, you've gone to the store, you've seen new plexiglass installed. Some places have hand washing stations, they have walk-up windows, and then there's those things that we don't even see, that where places have replaced their filtration systems, they've done deep cleaning and things like that. And of course, the obvious one, purchase of PPE, masks, gloves, not only for their employees, but also some stores, some businesses have provided these for customers because they don't want to be cited, in case somebody comes, it's from the state who comes and do an inspection. They don't want to be cited if they see customers not wearing masks in their establishment. And then, of course, purchasing of screening tools like thermometers. I've seen this mostly in restaurants where you just walk up. It's an automated device that takes your temperature. And then installment of touchless technology, like the touchless payment systems, right? And of course, not to mention any resources and time spent on additional training for their employees, and how to handle anything related to COVID-19. So these small businesses have been among the hardest hit by the pandemic, and hopefully these additional financial assistance will help keep them in business. More importantly, keep people employed here in Nevada and move our state in the right direction. Before I let you go, Thomas, early voting has started for Nevada 2 days ago. And according to Clark County officials, as of yesterday, end of business day yesterday, 50,352 Nevadans have already voted. In Las Vegas, Anahui, Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Thomas.
Anna, do you know of any businesses that have received help since the pandemic started?
Not personally. I read an analysis report according to the Small Business Administration. Since the pandemic started, Nevada actually, was last among 6 other states with having the same population of between 2.9 to 3.5 million people. We ranked last in the amount of loans approved and also in the amount of funds disbursed. And I can't speak to all of that, but I have spoken to one business owner that I know of. I usually support. I love supporting mom and pop shop. And this person owns a Guamanian restaurant. And he actually applied when this first started. He didn't hear back about it. So he felt kind of discouraged. He just went on doing what they thought, would help their business. They've stepped out of their box. They've, extended hours. They did, just delivery. They did everything they could to stay in business. Thomas.
Your observations, you talk about mom and pop shops. Mm-hmm. From what you've seen, how are they doing?
Surprisingly, in the immediate community here, like I said, we normally support those mom and pop shop, like this one who owns this Guamanian restaurant. I think from my observation, they are doing better than the ones who, I go to the mall, not too often lately, but I've seen more of those retail stores And I figure it's because they have more expenses. The rent is higher. And these mom and pop shops, they're used to, I feel like they're used to doing everything they can, to sacrificing more to be able to stay in business. And this person that I'm referring to, when I asked him, why don't you apply for more? There's these grants. Like anytime I hear of these news, I usually share it with everybody I know that may benefit from it. And he said he just doesn't have time because some of the requirements that you do have to provide financial documentation and things like that, and maybe some of them just don't have the time to do that.
And that is a problem with a lot of government programs. They're there, but they're just so difficult to access.
Yes,
the
absolutely.
requirements are stringent. They have rules only a bureaucrat could love.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually reached out, to a couple of the agencies, local government agencies, because I wanted to have some numbers, and I didn't, receive back information before I'm able to make this report. So hopefully, because I do want to know, like, how many small businesses have actually been able to receive these funds. And you mentioned with Catherine earlier, restaurants. That's my other observation. The food industry have really done, to me, from my observation, have done a lot better than other retail stores because, it's essential. I mean, they didn't experience being shut down completely unless they were fined. But that's really rare, and especially now as we're opening, you mentioned earlier, people just love to go out to eat, and I'm one of those.
A lot of pent-up demand there, and I'm sure. Before you go, just a couple of comments. You said early voting has begun in Nevada. Is there a lot of interest in casting a ballot early?
Yes. So I mean, as of yesterday, they have a tally of over 50,352 to be exact. When I took a peek this afternoon, that's how many people have already voted.
And these will be counted, of course, on November the 3rd.
Yes.
They're not a mail-in. Do you have mail-in there as well?
Yes, we do. We do have mail-in, and we have actually more than 30 locations for drop off, for people to be able to drop off their ballots, and there's no restrictions on which ones you can go to. As far as the website that I checked out today with Clark County, you can go to any of these mail drop off ballot locations.
Thank you for joining us this evening, Anna, and you stay safe.
Thank you, Thomas.
It's been a busy day at the business desk. We have word that CVS is on a hiring spree. Japan has joined the battle against big tech, and spending on political ads, well, it's at a record level. Eagle News business correspondent Bobby Soriano has the details.
Good evening. U.S. markets have closed. Here are your latest business headlines. CVS announced today that it is looking to immediately fill 15,000 new employment positions in preparation for the upcoming flu season and rollout of a coronavirus vaccine. The positions would primarily be full-time and part-time licensed pharmacy technician positions who will be trained to administer flu shots, COVID-19 testing, and the coronavirus vaccine once the government has approved its rollout. This is on top of the 76,000 jobs the company has added since August, in an aggressive push to fill all the roles needed to improve its healthcare services. Japan will be joining forces with Europe and the United States to combat market abuses by big tech. In an interview with Reuters, Kazuyuki Furuya, chairman of Japan's Fair Trade Commission, stated that if the size of any merger or business tie-up is big, we can launch an anti-monopoly investigation into the buyer's process of acquiring a startup. We're closely watching developments, including in Europe. This statement was made in regards to Google's bid to buy out fitness tracker maker Fitbit, which has faced scrutiny by EU regulators for possible antitrust violations. And finally, with the presidential election less than a month away, it may have felt like political ads have taken over the airwaves. but now we have data to confirm it. A report by Advertising Analytics concluded that a record-breaking $6.7 billion has been spent for this election cycle, with 15 days still left to go before Election Day. Although this number encompasses advertising for all elections, including state and local, the presidential election has seen its advertising budget more than double from 2016 numbers. A majority of spending has gone to local TV stations and local news outlets, where polling has shown tight races. But digital advertising has also seen profits increase as candidates look to persuade voters on platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Looking at today's earnings results, health technology company Philips announced greater than expected profits in the third quarter as the pandemic continues to increase demand for their hospital equipment. IBM announced earnings after the closing bell today that were in line with analysts' expectations, but share price declined with the news of the company's third straight quarter of declining revenue. U.S. indices all fell today as stimulus talks continue to falter. Reporting from New York, Bobby Soriano, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Still to come, our correspondents will take their place at the virtual round table. Tonight's topic, what other languages or language do you wish to speak and why? You're watching Eagle News America.
We know that this is a scary time for all of us.
The coronavirus is changing the world.
Changing our lives.
So please, take care of yourself.
Keep your distance.
Wash your hands.
And if you can, stay at home.
We at DW
are here for you.
We are working tirelessly to keep you informed on all of our platforms.
We're all in this together.
And together,
we'll make it through.
Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Please, stay safe.
Isang weekly winner na lang ang hinihintay po natin upang mabuo ang line-up sa monthly finals.
Feel na feel mo yung kanta, no? Parang wow.
Pinakita mo sa amin na you are really a singer.
Bagay na bagay sa inyo yung kinanta niyo.
This is Eagle News America. I'm Thomas Likeness, and we're back at the round table, the virtual round table. Today's topic, languages, and we're going to ask our correspondents, which ones do you wish you could speak? Let's begin with our chief correspondent from Washington, D.C., Imelin Ramos. Imelin, which other languages would you like to speak?
Hi again, Tom. Well, first, I know how to speak Filipino. That's my mother tongue. Filipino, and a dialect, Kapampangan. It's a province in Philippines, Pampanga. So I know Kapampangan, I know Filipino, and English. Well, as you can see, I'm still learning English. But in a wishful thinking scenario, I would love to learn Japanese. Mainly it is from watching too much anime, but it's also one of the countries I want to visit because I love the culture. Theirs is so rich and still alive, and which I want to dive into. It would be nice to wear a kimono while knowing the language as well. But in a more pragmatic sense, I think I'll go for Mandarin Chinese. One is because it's the most spoken language in the world. It might be beneficial to me in the future. And two, it is good for business. I remember back in the Philippines, we have a place there in Tondo, Manila called Divisoria, where have you been there, Tom? Where all kinds of shopping stalls are there and super discounted price. It's like 80% of the sellers are Chinese. And I wish, I would have known Chinese then so I could bargain up to the lowest price. Tom.
I can understand your frustration. We were in Taiwan for part of a day, and just trying to find a bus from the airport to where we wanted to go downtown was almost impossible because nobody there spoke English. And of course, we didn't speak Mandarin. So I understand why Mandarin might be handy. Anna Kui in Las Vegas, tell us what other languages you would like to speak.
Hi, Thomas. So first, I do speak Filipino or Tagalog. I know a little bit of, I grew up hearing Ilocano, which is a dialect in the Zambales region in the Philippines. So I grew up hearing that, so I can understand more than I can speak. I can speak it very little. And I do speak a little bit of Espanol, muy poquito, muy poco, just enough to get by and just enough to ask them if they need an interpreter. So I took Spanish for 4 years in high school, and I think that really helped me. And it's also helpful that a lot of their words are very similar, if not the same, with the Filipino language. So that's that. And for fun, I would like to learn Korean.
Why Korean?
Korean, so that I don't have to read the subtitle when I watch Korean K-drama. Not that I watch too many of them. I can't. I just don't have time. But for fun, I would do that. But I would, just like Imelin, I would love to learn Mandarin, Chinese. I don't know, some people think I'm Chinese. I've actually had I can recall 3 different occasions when elder Chinese people have actually come to me and asked me if I spoke Chinese, or just right off try to talk to me in Chinese. So I would love to learn Mandarin Chinese, Tom.
We go down to the deep in the heart of Texas, where Jane Kathleen resides, and what languages would you like to learn?
Well, Thomas, here in Texas, one of the second languages already, being so close to the border of Mexico, is Spanish. So I actually, in addition to speaking my own native language of Filipino or Tagalog, I do speak Spanish, having lived here for most of my life. And I also speak French fluently. I studied French in high school and in college, and what really helped was having best friends who live in another country where you can converse regularly, practicing each other's languages. But other languages that I would really love to learn, like Anna, I wanted to learn Korean because I was fascinated by the completely different writing and alphabet, and also, of course, the favorite Korean dramas. I would love to impress my friends, watching it and being able to understand and say some of the phrases. But another language that I was also fascinated with, that I would love to learn one day, is Russian. Russian has a different alphabet, and certain sounds are represented differently, in terms of the letters. And so I actually have, I now have 3 friends that I met on Facebook who live in not just Russia, but also the Ukraine. And I would love to learn that language so I could converse with them more and have that exchange of culture. So I guess Korean and Russian would be 2 languages I would love to learn.
I've got to ask, what dialect of French did you learn? Parisian or Canadian, which is kind of really not French.
Well,
well, it is, but
I think the dialect of your country's French is, they call it Quebecois.
Quebecois, yeah.
Quebecois. And I noticed they tend to have an accent, almost like an American-ish slang accent. But the French that I learned was like actual, original French.
Parisian French.
I guess if that's what you call it. But I did notice I did notice, though, Thomas, that when I went to France, each region of France has a different accent than Parisian. There's a different style of speaking in the north, the south, and in Paris. Paris, it seems, of course, that would be like the main accent, that most people are familiar with. But yes, interesting question.
Yep. Just like the U.S., just like Canada, you go to a different region, people speak very, very much differently. As you would know, if you'd visit the northern states, they don't sound like Texas.
That's true.
We're going to bring in one of our newcomers here to Eagle News, Maricar Valesco. What languages would you like to speak that you don't? And which ones do you know?
Thank you, Thomas. So I actually only fluently speak English, but I travel a lot. And every single time I'm in a new state or even a new country, I always sit down and think, and I look around and really reflect upon, do I want to live here? Is this a place I can envision myself living in? And I said to myself that at least for a couple months or a couple years in my life, I would love to live internationally. And as I've been really thinking about which country would it be, I wanted it to be a big change. And I've been really thinking about Japan. So I too have been very interested about learning Japanese. I'm actually planning on starting to take classes next year in preparation for it. And although I do not pick languages up very quickly, hence me only understanding English, I feel like the motivation of knowing that I'm going to be living in another country and wanting to truly respect the culture, respect those around me, as well as be able to converse well with others is going to be a good motivation. But another one that I would like to learn down the road is actually German. I grew up with cousins from Germany that would vacation in San Diego, where I'm actually from. And for them, it was always so interesting, them teaching me little tidbits of German. And since then, they've actually influenced some of my other cousins to learn how to speak German as well. And we are just a little family with some German-speaking folks. So down the road, I would love to learn that too, Tom.
Sounds good. My grandparents were actually German, but unfortunately, they never passed the language down to my parents, and of course, we never got it either. And we'll ask Catherine Fiesta, what languages do you know? What languages would you like to learn?
So, Thomas, of course, I was born here in the States, so English is my first language. But growing up, my grandmother would always put on Filipino teleseries, which is like dramas. And I would learn from that. I also know another dialect from the Philippines, which is Ilocano. I learned that through having my parents try to speak it so that I wouldn't know what was going on. But I picked up pretty quickly once that happened. And then the language that is mostly spoken here in the community that I live in, it's of course English, but then a lot of Spanish speakers as well. I also took 4 years of Spanish, but again, like Anna, it's muy poquito, just enough to get me by through a conversation. But the language, I'm hopping on the bus as well, but I would love to learn the Korean language because I do love watching Korean dramas, but other than Korean dramas, I'm also a big fan of Korean pop music. So in hopes that I go to Korea one day, I really do hope to understand and hopefully speak to the people there as well.
Well, as I tabulate the votes, it looks like I've got 3 for Japanese, if I had enough fingers to count these, and 3 for Korean. Those were the 2 most popular languages that people want to learn. Now, I like Maricar, is I only have one language, English. It wasn't, the era I grew up in, learning a second language wasn't just wasn't a priority. And as a matter of fact, most of the immigrants to Canada, particularly after the war, tried to pretend that they didn't know any other language. It was almost, in those days, a thing of shame. You wanted just to speak perfect English. So it was sad because for the second generation, languages were never passed down. The language I would like to learn is Tagalog, because we're in the Philippines every 2 years. I've started to learn it, I don't know how many times, and the problem with learning a language is you've got to stay at it every day. You've got to dedicate that 1 hour, hour and a half a day. You can't work really hard at it on the weekend and leave it until next Saturday because you're going to forget it. You've got to constantly reinforce it. For me, it won't be a problem to keep up with it if I'm learning it, because some days I hear more Tagalog than I hear English. And I can sing in Tagalog. I can sing in Tagalog, read it a little bit. I have trouble hearing it, though, because my brain is still trying to translate one word at a time, and it can't keep up with what people are saying. So it just sounds like one big word. But anyway, that's what I would like to do. Anyway, there's a language we all speak, and we're going to speak it now. That's the language of appreciation. As we end the program,